will be an attempt to give you all a perspective of your budding technologists as to what should you be seeing when you get out of triple IDD into the real world where technology is used by users, not just by the technology professionals, so to say. The other aspect that I will bring out is this myth that information security is all about either an application and protecting an application or a database. That's all minor, small aspects. We are talking about securing our enterprise. The scale is different, the parameters is different, and the perspectives that need to be there is what I will bring into there. So before we dive into this, one simple question that I want you all to, perspective I want you all to have. That is, today, all enterprises, 100% of the enterprises have been breached. There is nothing called as a secure enterprise. All 100% enterprises have been breached because no technology can protect an attack from coming. All security technologies that exist today, right, are almost obsolete. Have any one of you read or heard of the Verizon breach report? My recommendation is please pick up this. It's a free download. It comes up every year. It's one of the most authentic documents on the state of attacks and breaches. It's called the Verizon Data Breach Report. In 2013, 85% of the enterprises were breached. Of those 85% of the breach, this year it's 100%. Of those 85% of the enterprises that were breached, 90% did not know that they were breached. The 10% that got to know that they were breached, got to know either from customers who went and complained or from YouTube. Now that's the state, that's the ground reality. We will explore all these aspects in the next 60 odd minutes. So the agenda today is divided into three parts. First is, how is technology creating what we call digital enterprises? What is a digital enterprise? And how are technologies actually evolving, making them into entities that are future of. Digital enterprises depend on one very foundational requirement, and that is customer experience. We will explore these two things and see what are the attacks that are happening on these two by a layer of security controls that need to be put into place. We'll go into this. This broadly is the agenda, where all that I talked about will be covered in these aspects. What is this? Can anyone say? Anyone recognize these two pictures? From anyone?
You're going to get your Diwali sweets by this in Delhi.
Yeah, what is it?
It looks like the flying drones that the US is trying to accommodate by
Drones, you're correct, but not the US. Yeah.
Amazon drones.
Absolutely. These are drones. This one, the one on the left is the Amazon, drone, and the one on the right is the Google drone. It is like now Domino's and everyone is coming up with this. But what really is it? Not from the technology perspective. What is a drone? Is drone really being used by Amazon because of technology? These two pictures out here reflect a changing business model. Now, how is that business model getting changed? Through this. Like say, by the way, Amazon is going to try its drones in India in the next 2 months. It's going to deliver items. You go click on Amazon, buy a particular item, and an item will be put onto the flushed by these drones and dropped right at your doorstep. Now that's technology. But more than technology, it has changed Amazon's business model, where they are actually morphing from an e-commerce based organization into a logistics, a forward-looking, digital-powered logistics company, and so that is as far as Amazon is concerned. Drones, incidentally, are not science fiction. Today they have become ubiquitous. I just put this thing out here for 43,000 rupees. You get a drone, and this particular model that I put out here can be controlled. You can actually do an online purchase of this from Amazon. Today, of course, it won't be delivered by a drone, right? But you can pick this up. You can control it with the iPad, iPhone. It can go up to 400 feet height. 400 feet because that's the maximum that's permitted for commercial, approved objects to fly in the thing. And it can take high definition video from there. It's got GPS, it knows its position, so it takes photographs and it puts a lifelong out there. This is the state as far as drones is concerned. But what is it really doing for Amazon and whoever are going to go for the drone? It's going to bring their operating cost terrifically low. Because the last mile issue of delivery, where Amazon used to have a whole lot of cost incurred in trucks, people, etc., is taken care of. But there is one more thing, and that is what I want you all to focus on, and that is customer experience. What these drones are really going to do eventually is give a great customer experience. In fact, the CEO of Amazon, Bezos, went public and announced that we're going in for drones, not only for the cost part of it, reduction in cost, but most importantly, as a strategic focus to enhance customer experience, where we will deliver these items within 30 minutes to the thing. You purchase out there and you will get your stuff within 30 minutes delivered at your doorstep. That's the customer experience that we're talking about. Come to the next thing. How many of you are aware of 3D printing? Good. 3D printing today is ubiquitous, right? The costs are out here, 38,000 rupees, right? You can get printers, personal printer. For a lakh, you can get a really powerful printer. And with 3D printing, you can print every imaginable thing, right from lingerie to guns to houses. Now, this is 3D technology. Well, what is it doing to business models? It has revolutionized supply chains. Traditionally, you have a manufacturer who sends this thing to distributors, then from there to retailers and customers. With 3D printing, you don't need to send stuff there. You just send an information file, a CAD/CAM form. You all know how 3D works. Fundamentally, it's a CAD/CAM application which slices that 3D thing into thousands of slivers, and that's sent. Right? So now a manufacturer can send that file directly to the customer, and the customer can print that part at his location, cutting off the entire supply chain, the issues related with transportation, etc. Just imagine if there is a customer who's using a equipment whose part has to come from a foreign country. Today, it goes through all the custom checks, and it's a 1 month process. Today, if he needs a spare part, he calls up that manufacturer anywhere in the world. That person would just send that 3D algorithm, that file, to him. He gets it in 2 minutes. He prints it in the next 2 hours. Right? That's the way it's been revolutionized. This is technology revolution. What has this done again? It's lowered operating costs. Very importantly, hugely better customer experience. So now from till now, whatever we talked about, what is it that we are seeing? Technology which traditionally used to be used in organizations for automating business processes now are used for generating revenue. That's the shift that has happened. And enterprises that use technology to generate revenue through bettering customer experience are the ones that we call digital enterprises. Let's see. So here we see there is a direct link between technology and the business model. Now here, you see this. Technology is linked with objectives. Right? And this is the change. This is how the enterprises have moved. There was a time in the pre-web where organizations used ERP and CRM for optimizing relationships, customer relationships. It moved on to extending those relationships through CRM and web technologies. With EDI, BI and portals, those relationships now started getting formed into sales channels, global sales channels. When mobile, social, big data came, the nexus of forces that was created, empowered organizations to become very intimate with customers. Now enterprises could communicate with customers through social, through web, through a number of things. But now we are in the digital business era, where sensors, 3D printing, which you already saw, smart machines, which are drones, etc. All these are being used by enterprises to fundamentally change customer experiences, take it to the next higher level. But why should enterprises focus at all on customer enterprise? That's the bottom line. That's because there are two perspectives to customer experience. One is value, a perspective of value, and other perspective is power. Let's see what is this. See, I'm building this thing up before I come to the actual security. Value. What does the enterprise really manufacture? Does it manufacture goods or services? It actually, when you consume, when you buy something, what are you really buying? You're buying an experience. You're not really buying a product. You're actually buying what that product can give you, the experience. That's why Forrester, Gartner, they're analyst companies. They're all talking about the thing that organizations don't sell products and services. They sell experiences. You need to focus on experience. Jobs Stevens in an interview was asked, right, after this was in 2009 when iPhone had actually taken the world by storm, many times over. He was asked, what makes Apple a great technology company? And he answered, he said, I wonder why people consider Apple a technology company. We are a pure experiences company. The IBM survey out here, which we are talking about, 95% of the CEOs in the survey said, for them, customer experience is the most important priority for them to realize their strategy. So you as technologists, right, have to start looking customer experience inward to the bits and bytes, not the other way around. That's one of the lessons. This is value. What is the second perspective we talked about is the power. Today, customers, all of us, we have become extremely powerful as far as the enterprise is concerned. There was a time when enterprises used to roughshod, they used to walk over customers. No longer. You have a mobile phone in one hand and you have a social network in your other hand. you can kill enterprises today, and they know it very well. You can demand great experience. Right? There is something called as brand loyalty. Organizations used to spend millions of dollars on building their brand. For the FIFA, which took place recently, the top-tier enterprises, they had to dish out $25 million to be in that, in that main arena. That's the kind of money that needs to be spent to build brand. But are they getting the ROI? Not at all. Customers have become extremely choosy. Right? The EY retail survey of last year in the US said less than 25% of the purchase of all retail purchases in US, right, had anything to do with brand loyalty. On top of this, right, customers today, if they get a raw deal, they do not keep quiet. They go and put it into the social, their community, and can, beat the reputation of a company down. As we see in the case of Hassan. How many of you all heard of the case of Hassan, British Airways? This is a very famous, you can check this out. This person, his baggage was mishandled by British Airways. He tried talking to them, but as usual, big companies, lone customer, they tried their usual old-time tricks of ignoring or giving some wishy-washy answers. All that he did was tweet it to his friends. And from his friends to their friends and their this thing, it became a viral movement against British Airways. Abandon British Airways was the movement. Within 4 hours, CEO of British Airways publicly apologized to Hassan. Right? That's the power, right, which customers have if they don't get the right experience. So what are organizations doing about all this? Right? And what's technology and security got to do all this? We'll come to that, but this is the base. I'm building the base. You need to be very clear in your mind. There is the bottom line and the top line and both the side lines is for an enterprise is just customer experience. What are organizations doing about it? They are going hammer and tongs aggressively in ensuring that customers get the experience, right? So that if they have a good experience, they will speak well about this enterprise, and we'll come to that. So what do they do? Now, what is this customer experience? It's actually, you can visualize customer experience as a pyramid, having 3 layers. Bottom layer is a value and quality. Every product and service should deliver the required quality and service value to the customer. Next layer is ease of use and engagement. And then the top is emotional fulfillment. All 3 are equally important. But of them, it is emotional fulfillment that brings in loyalty and stickiness in the minds of customers. And therefore, it is the stated purpose of enterprises to ensure that the emotional fulfillment of customers today is enhanced to the maximum possible, so that they are most loyal and they are most sticky. Because if they are, then they can retain these customers who are today so fickle and keep changing their brands and vendors. They can retain them. They can grow their revenues. And for this, what are enterprises doing? They're collecting a whole lot of customer data. They're collecting customers' demographic data, their transaction data, online activities data, social activity, and adding real-time or near real-time contextual data, pushing it into analytics, big data and analytics engines, getting insights. With those insights, they're actually creating and crafting customized offerings for individual customers. Today, the segment is n equal to 1. They're making it, if you like a particular thing, they get those insights and they offer you that. And that offering is what they're targeting for enhancing emotional fulfillment. But the thing about this, insights is insights become better and more refined if you get more and more data about the customer. So there is this mad rush among all enterprises today to collect more and more customer information. And what is that leading to? Is that the collected data which is lying with enterprises has spiraled almost out of control. And big data is creating a huge amount of privacy issues. Anyone know about big data issues, privacy issues? Fine. I'll give you two examples. Big data creates privacy issues in two aspects. One is if you have a data set that is completely anonymized, no personal data or personally identifiable data in one data set. You collect number of these data sets up there, push it into an analytics engine, it correlates, and you'll be able to identify. Like classic example of this is in US. They had a data set which was completely anonymized. It just had three, it was all, nobody could identify whose data it was except they had three information of their gender, zip code, and birth date. Now that anonymized data set, when it was pushed into a big data analytics platform, and those guys who actually hacked into this, they related this with the US census data, and they could identify more than 84% of the people in this so-called anonymized data. That's one of the ways that big data analytics reduces privacy. But more importantly, there's a second one, and there the privacy gets lost because of the deep insights that big data and analytics engines can provide. Like, anyone heard of Target? Target is infamous for something. 110 million IDs, credentials lost last year. But it's also known for its privacy, it sent a pregnancy-related mailer to a school-going teenager. When the pregnancy-related mailer reached the teenage girl's house, she was out at school at that time. Father got the particular mailers. He saw that and he was furious. He wanted to sue Target for sending a daughter that. Right? Before he could do that, to his horror, he realized that she was pregnant. Right? Now, how did Target get to know that? Because in their analytics, they realized that a woman who buys calcium tablets, magnesium tablets, and unperfumed body lotions, all three together, the chances of her being pregnant was about 96%. And she bought that, right? They knew she was pregnant. That's the kind of insights you get which affects privacy. So, all this, on the one hand, organizations are collecting massive amounts of customer data, right? Because they have to get, to fulfill the emotional aspects and thereby customer experience. On the other hand, when they push it through analytics, huge amount of privacy issues. So what has happened? Today, privacy has emerged as the number one concern for digital businesses. It has overtaken security. I am a thorough out-and-out security person. Right? For me, it's a little odd to say privacy has overtaken security, but the fact, when we are talking about digital enterprises and digital business, today privacy is a bigger concern than security. We will touch upon privacy management. The other issue is people don't know the difference between privacy and security. We'll come to that aspect. Right? Second, this concern has pushed regulators and customers both alike. Regulators are bringing in major enactments. There are, I don't want to go into these details, but just for your thing, there is they made data impact, privacy by design, data portability, default. Right to be forgotten is something that you all must have heard out here. Google lost the case. Today you can ask Google to delete your data that it holds, right? Under the right to be forgotten clause or mandate. There was a time when one used to say, in the internet, your data is written like in the sands of time, like it cannot be washed away. That way, internet your data cannot. But now with these mandates, you can demand. And I forget the name of this athlete. Would you know that? Anyone know about the athlete who performed? Huh? A FIFA player. Sorry. Absolutely. Eden. He performed badly, right? There was a lot of things written about his bad performance. Right? He asked Google to forget that. Because he said, next time when I start doing well, people will always correlate, always have a bad performance coming up there to bring me down. Right? That's privacy. That's a regulation. So what are organizations doing? They are in a bind. On the one hand, they have to collect more and more customer data for enhancing customer experience. And on the other, there is this impending storm of regulation. Right? They are stuck in between that. Is there a way out? Yes. There is a need for balancing privacy with commercial requirements. Right? You need to have positive sum, not zero sum. Zero sum is like in either a 1 or a 0. A positive sum is like you have shades in between. And for these privacy technologies are coming up. Like say, for example, this is online advertising, from full privacy to full commercial value. You have things, I've just put 3, there are a number of this thing. There's Privad, agnostic developed by Stanford, and Retrieve by Microsoft. Now basically what these technologies permit is that they allow commercial activities to continue without it really becoming an impediment to privacy. Of course, I think these slides will be available for you also. You can always have a look at this. Fundamental part is that the profiling, behavioral profiling that used to happen at the advertising network servers is pushed into the browser and the user has no control. That's the bottom line. Now, having said this, what have we seen? Privacy is the #1 issue, right? Now, business entities collect this thing for enhancing customer experience, but are they doing only that? No. Once they've got the insight, they also use it for CRM, customer relationship management, whereby they try and improve with those information. They improve their product, increase upselling opportunities, trigger new product and service. Right? They do all these things. While they do all these things, it is perfectly all right. The problem is, 1 in 3 companies today start selling that. They start monetizing that particular. This is what Gartner said. I don't know, why is that green thing you are sharing what happened?
That's a WebEx thing.
Okay. Listen, it's monetizing customer data. So now they've collected data, they've got insights, now they say, okay, they're not happy with that. Now they say, let's start making money out of it by either directly selling or bartering it. Now, all of you all know one thing. Where do cyber criminals come? Where there is money. If there is a database that can be monetized, it's money. Cyber criminals are going to come for that. There's going to be a huge escalation of attacks, and we're seeing that. At one time, attacks were happening for picking up credentials for identity theft. Today they're going to attack, right? They're attacking to get to those monetizable data sets. This is one issue. What is the next issue relating to customer experience? Reputation. What is the biggest risk of a company? Reputation. It's a strategic risk. Reputation comes under whom? Like say CIO handles certain parts, CFO handles certain parts. There is operational risk and there is market risks, etc. But reputational risk is the baby of the CEO. The reputation goes down, the company goes down, right? 80% of the value of a business is in its reputation. And today, social media activity can kill the reputation of an organization. extremely easy. We saw Hassan and what he did. But he's not on NGOs and organizations. They are also getting after enterprises. I've given, now here, let's say for example, I've given an example of Greenpeace. Greenpeace brought Nestle to its knees on a threat of reputation impact, right? Nestle used to use palm oil from Indonesia by deforesting, basically cutting rainforests of Indonesia. Greenpeace said that's bad. Right? They told Nestle to stop and they went on a campaign. First they said that, Nestle didn't agree. They went on a campaign on social media. Nestle fought that campaign. But you cannot fight community. They buckled. What did they do first? They removed that supplier, Indonesian supplier. Sinar Mas, the supplier, they removed. Then they promised, the CEO promised in May that next year onwards, Nestle will only buy sustainable palm oil. If they use one tree for palm oil, they plant more than a certain number. That's the power that people have. But that can bring the reputation down. Right? Now comes the third one, which is where the real sale. The first two things in an enterprise is generally handled by the marketing team and the corporate communications. They are the ones who do that. Security doesn't get involved in the first two parts. But in the third thing, right, in cyber criminals, launching cyber extortion, what is a DDoS or what is a DOS today? DOS is ensuring that an organization cannot function, right? So you have, escalating DDoS attacks, and they are extorting. How many of you are aware 2 months back our e-commerce enterprises, e-commerce organizations in India were attacked? Anyone listening? For money. They tell these organizations, if you do not give these many dollars, we're not going to allow your operations on. They continuously bring down their organization. While that is happening there, now cyber criminals are extorting money, saying if you don't pay us, we will spread bad reputation about you in social media, right? Which can actually go virally and cause much more damage than just a website not being available for a few hours through a DDoS, right? That needs to be handled. I'm just painting this digital era, the issues. The next issue, the next layer, there's something called an omni-channel experience. Channels of communication between the enterprise and the customers, right? Earlier were through radio, billboard, and broadcast, TV. It was a one-way communication. When social media, web, mobile, contact centers, etc. came up, it became a two-way communication. Right? But those customers communicate with an enterprise not through one channel. They communicate simultaneously through a number of channels, which many of y'all would have done. Y'all use a tablet, you use smartphones, all these things together, right? Now using omni-channel aspect. So, here, there are various screens that the customer is using. And he uses various channels to get to the organization. You need to have absolute security between them. Now, what are the security controls that you need to put in out there? You need to have federated identity management. You're aware of federated identity management? Very importantly, social identities. Till now, enterprises always controlled identities through their IAM. Those days are gone. Customers who want to communicate with enterprises want to bring their Facebook, Twitter, and whatever third-party credentials that they are used to communicate with enterprises. They bring their social identities. Today, as I speak, I do not know of any enterprise which has the infrastructure to handle social identities, to authenticate them. There are, of course, products like Oracle, etc., which are coming up to handle this thing. It's a major issue, social thing. Centralized opt-in and opt-out. The regulatory requirement requires customers
Saurabh Roy. Whoever is connected from the web, can you mute your video also? Hello?
It's
We have talked about privacy requirements, which are getting mandated. One of the requirements is that the opt-in. Customer should be able to opt-in only then. So now imagine, can the enterprise ask a customer to opt-in into so many different channels? There has to be a centralized opt-in and then opt-out, right? Context-based authentication. We'll come to that later when we go into the deep of integration with SIEM, etc. All these are required. Now comes the third layer, the value and quality. Right? For this, you need to look at business model security. What is a digital business? Digital business has been defined by Gartner as creation of new business designs by blurring the digital and physical worlds. That's the definition of a digital business. We'll get to this. Right? You saw the drones, etc., which is there. Right? An example of this is there was a time when enterprises' connection with the customer used to end at the point of sale. You sold, till then they were like, your best pal. Right? But the moment the sale happened, you were running after them. The point ended. Those days are gone. Now, the relationships are enduring even during the consumption time. In US, almost all the insurance companies, car insurance, right? The policies are ongoing policies in the sense one takes a car insurance, sensors in the car keep finding out how the person is driving. And depending on whether he's driving safely or rashly, the policy amount keeps changing. The premium is dynamically changing. That means it's physical world, sensors, and the logical world. Take the case of, I'll give you another case, of a golf club. One is to buy a golf club. Today the golf clubs have got sensors in them. You buy a golf club to actually with an intent of hitting far. Your ball should go far. Right, for which you need to swing properly. These sensors pick up and find out how your swing goes. Right? It checks the speed, the acceleration, the angle, and sends that data and the impact point, and sends that data to your mobile, to that golfer who's carrying a mobile. The mobile picks that data up, sends up into the cloud, where big data analytics come up, and it finds out a whole lot of reasons and ways how he can improve his stroke, and immediately sends back a feedback to him saying your shot was like this, but if you do this, it'll be. And this guy can actually check. I want to compare myself with Tiger Woods, so he'll also tell him if Tiger Woods hit this shot, he would have done it this way, and this is what you need to do. So what is really happening? His consumption of that golf club, that product, is digitized, and it's like the relationship between the company and the product and the customer is continuing even after sale. January, a toothbrush was released. You buy a toothbrush, right? It keeps the relationship on. As you keep brushing, again from your mobile, it tells you you're brushing where and other things are. Plus, it finds out your location and it tells you the closest dentists are here. These dentists are good. So it's communicating with you. That's the thing. The physical and the logical, worlds are blurred. But let's come to this part. What are the two things out here? We are talking about business designs, creation of new business designs, and physical worlds. What are business designs? Anyone knows business? Anyone heard of business models? Okay. There's something called as business designs. About 10 years back, Harvard Business Review, there was an article on micro business models, where they said the current way of an enterprise having one business model that we will do this to earn money is what is, broadly a business model. So one business model is not going to work because the customers, the requirements and the tastes and interests are so dynamically changing. You can't get stuck in one. Have micro business models. Based on this, there was a company called IDEO. IDEO is among the most creative companies in the world today. Most people who do their MBA from Harvard and other things, and they all joined that company for creativity. This company came up with this concept of business designs. What they say business designs has got three aspects. Identify the customer need, create a technology prototype, use the technology prototype immediately to create competitive advantages, and it's a loop. So what happens is in today's world, business enterprises don't have one model. They are got very small models, and the way to find out what customers need is Gartner calls it as business moments. Forrester calls it as mobile moments. Now, when you pick up your mobile, to do something, that's the moment. A company which is giving service should have all the information made available to the enterprise at that point of time. To be able to find out and have a whole infrastructure at the back to give that service at that point of time, because he's going to put his mobile back inside in that few seconds. That's why today the competition between enterprises are not 1 year long and it's in this microseconds and milliseconds. Who can give the best thing, right? Now, when that need of customer is found, it has to get translated into a program, an algorithm, an app, basically, right? Apps have to continue to be developed, right? And all of you all know apps today are a big problem. We'll come to that. Right? What are the two major vulnerabilities? App development, velocity. You need to be continuously, quickly doing. Those old application development thing that we all learned, and maybe you're learning. Hopefully you shouldn't be learning that. The waterfall model. Anyone learn waterfall model of software development? Hey. Anyways, waterfall is that like a waterfall, you have everything sequenced. Find out what the requirement, design, then do the thing, then finally test and then release. It's a thing. Generally either used for IT applications that can go on for 12 months, 18 months time frame. Today, you need to be able to push out an app within 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Waterfall models are outdated and obsolete, so therefore organizations are using Agile. Agile as a way of, how many have heard of Agile? Yeah, that's it. You better on the ball. Scrum technology. Okay? Use Scrum where the sprints are 24-hour sprints. Use those. Now, when that happens, what is the problem with Scrum and Agile? One major security problem, and that's what I'm talking about, major vulnerability. You cannot have testing done. Right? You do not have the time to test. What is the foundation of application security? Testing. Now with the velocity of apps like that you got to push out into the app store, right? You don't have time to test. Secondly, even if you have the intent and a little bit of time, you've got too many devices that you need to test in. How many devices are there? Different varieties of devices are there for Android. Can anyone say?
These are about 28,000.
No. Anyway, from 10, 15, 20, 100, 1,000. There are 11,500, with major device variants of Android. You got to test your app and all of that. Can you do it? You can't. So what do organizations do? They create. They have an agile lab. They create, because the business design has to be created for competitive advantage. They've created an app. They've just push that thing out there into the app store. Keep your fingers crossed and say, when something happens, we will immediately respond. But most organizations don't have in-house capability to respond, because for responding, you need to be a Microsoft with that kind of thing, where if there is a zero-day attack on the thing, within 24 hours they're responding, coming out with patches. Can that be done by enterprises today? No. Right? So, that's why 100% of the apps out there today, as per, actually I'm not going into mobile thing, but the surveys show 100% of the paid apps in both iOS and Google Store are hacked. 100%. Okay. I'll leave it at that. So that's the apps. Vulnerabilities caused by things. Things are like sensors. You wear your things, like you use your like they have the heart monitors, etc. Imagine the privacy aspect. That is picking up your medical data, your personal medical data. Right? There could be a sensor just picking up your your heart, artificial heart pulses and sending all those things. So there are a lot of plus we'll see that thing when we do the IoT. Now given this thing, we come to so we saw digital enterprise, we saw the importance of experience and the problems associated with experience. Right? Now within your enterprise, you need to be able to protect all that and you need to have security. Right? For securing that thing, you need to have all these layers. You need to have IAM layer, API data. We go through these quickly. Right? Let's take the IAM layer. Today, identity and access management. Identity is the core heart of our enterprise. We are today in a perimeterless world. Earlier, you had every organization at a perimeter, you put a firewall right at the perimeter. There are no perimeters. There is no difference between insiders and outsiders, that's blurred. Right? So, with all these things happening, right, how do you still be able to control? Your only control is an identity. That's become the perimeter. It's become the heart. And you need to have various technologies, SAML to Auth, OpenID Connect, which became an official standard in February this year. So you need to bring those, all those need to be put in place. Identity management. In a company, normally identity is managed by the IT operations team, not by security team. Incidentally, in enterprises, you have this segregation. You have security team separate and IT operations team separate. Right? So identity has always been a subset of IT. And so it is IT operations team who provision, deprovision that. Those days are gone because now that has to move. Identity, because of its importance, it has to move to security. And there are three components of identity management. Identity provisioning, which is the traditional giving an identity and deprovisioning. But there's also identity governance and identity intelligence. You need to know precisely what each user is doing in that thing. So that comes. So that's another area. Support for social identity, which I already talked about, that's important. Context-based authentication is risk-based. Like say if someone tries to access after 6 o'clock in the evening, right? It's a context of time, right? Your authentication should be able to say I need to check. Or if you have logged in from an IP from Chennai, now and again after half an hour, you're logging now 1 hour, you're logging in from Delhi, IP, the same thing. Obviously, you can't fly from Chennai to Delhi. So the context of the thing, environment, comes out with the thing that there is some. Though he has put the right credential and user account, context comes and nullifies it. That's the kind of thing that's coming. And emergence of mandatory access control. You're done MAC, mandatory access and discretionary access. Mandatory access controls were normally with the military systems, which require high access control. It's now getting commercial, it's coming in commercial. So these are all the identity layers. API layer. Today, the engine of a digital enterprise, of a digital era is an API. You need to connect. The connection happens through APIs, right? Twitter handles 16 billion API calls every day. This, Expedia, I was reading about Expedia. It generated $2 billion of revenue through its API calls. API is a big time. Normal, organizations have about, medium size will have about 50 to 100. Large organizations can have thousands of APIs. APIs basically connect your infrastructures with the access. Like a mobile app, web app will go through the API layer into the backend, through the enterprise service bus and then to app servers. Like say for example, I'll give you see this is an example of a mobile API. You see the thing, there is a mobile application here, there are two APIs. So from outside they come in API, both at the north end and the south end. Okay? Most of the attacks today that are happening on the API because that's the boundary today. You need to attack that. If Amazon, whenever it got like hacked, it was the API which got hacked. APIs are the vulnerable, like soft code for which you need to have a whole lot of security, identity management, traffic control, XML poisoning, JSON. I don't want to get into these details, but the fact of the matter is there are a lot of controls that need to be put in to secure your API. Then you have data governance. Data is always associated with application. You have an application and you have CRM application and you have data. You have an ERP application and you have a data with it. Data is subservient to the application. That is gone now. Now there is a separation of data and application. Right? And we are coming into a place in the digital enterprises of organizations have what is called as a data platform. So data from all over the place is being accessed from the data platform. Data could be lying all over your enterprise, and an enterprise could be extended into many countries, and it could be structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. All of them get linked to the data platform. Data platform exposes what we call data services for accessing those data. Applications access that data service and then go on to that. So from outside, you can see the thing. Things, I've written things because sensors also require data. Things or other businesses who want to connect to you or internally, they connect to applications. Applications connect to these data services and to the data platform and to the data silo. So you need to have a whole lot of control at the data platform level, identity, access, and API. This is not all. Issue comes up in the security tools today. There are a number of security tools today, right from SIEM to fraud to DAM, DLP, and etc. etc. None of them can protect data across silos. That means you do not have a tool that can protect structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. You will have a tool which will most of the tools only work in structured data. You can't have across. So now there is an emergence of a new category of security tool which is called DCAP, Data-Centric Audit and Protection Tool. Right? These tools, which are still in the emerging part, they can work equally under different silos, right? Structured, unstructured, etc. And they can do a whole lot of things, like 1 to 9, you just said they can do assessment, activity monitoring, protection, for all that. This needs to be in place, DCAP things. Then comes privacy. Privacy, I said, is the biggest concern in digital business era. Stanford Law research working on big data said, finding the right balance between privacy, risk, and big data may well be the biggest policy challenge of our time, of human time. It's such a big issue there, right? And managing privacy in enterprises starts by figuring out what's the difference between privacy and security. Anyone here can tell me? What is security? Security is basically an authorization to access, to get to something. It's an authorization. Whereas privacy is a right. The two of them are completely different, but we tend to mix this up so much. Almost 90% of the businesses, enterprises, they do not understand that. And they keep saying, I've got a DLP, I've got firewall, I've got IPS, and therefore I've protected my privacy. No. You need to have all these things. You need to have organizational controls that's quite okay. Technical controls which are security focused, as I said, firewall, IPS, DLP, DRM, DAM, IAM, encryption, SSL are all security. They help privacy. But there are privacy focused technologies. Very, very few organizations have put these privacy focused technologies in place. You get to this. Data masking, tokenization, format preserving encryption, anonymization, and PEG. Right? These are the privacy related things. SMACI controls. SMACI is social, mobile, analytics, cloud, and I stands for Internet of Things. Each of them have got a problem. Like say your cloud, there's data confidentiality, ownership. So your data which is out in the cloud, there really is no confidentiality. Who owns that data? Right? When you want to delete that data, it remains. There's remnants. You can't audit that data. Right? There are regulatory requirements. Like in India, most of the telecom, say I'm giving an example of telecom, your customer data cannot go out in the cloud beyond the boundaries of India. Right? Cloud is all over the place. There are legal requirements, privacy, jurisdiction, business continuity. Right? How do you shift your cloud thing from there into another cloud? Suppose that cloud person like is about to close down, right? Or he's got problems. Huge issues. Social media, leakage of enterprise data, targeted attacks. Biggest avenue for advanced persistent attacks is spear phishing through social media. Right? Big data, privacy, unauthorized access, veracity, they're all issues relating to things. And mobile, of course, unmanaged, insecure data, loss of sensitive enterprise data, device support, rogue marketplaces. Major problem. Most of the data, apps that you download from app stores is like, reverse engineered. They're like binary, hack. It's very, very simple. It's kid stuff today to take an app, right, and reverse engineer, get down to the source code of that particular app, modify the app and put it back into the thing. There are over 3,000 versions of Angry Birds. Even the developer of Angry Birds has to check the digital certificate to say which is the original one. There are that many of this thing. There are over 500 rogue app, mobile store, app store. Especially if your thing is jailbroken, you had it. Anyway, these are some of them. But now, important thing is the IoT. Internet of Things. How many are aware of Internet of Things? Good. Because Internet of Things is not science fiction. It's something that's already happened. Right? There are over 15 billion devices connected. Right? And this is going to go up to $35 billion in 2020. Huge amount of money being generated through Internet of Things. Right? Therefore, wherever there is money generated, there are attacks. Attacks are becoming huge. And Cisco is offering bounty for guys to come up with apps for IoT security. These are some of the things, like security cameras have been hacked. Light bulbs have been hacked. Right? Meters, smart meters have been hacked. This is a classic case where the tire pressure management system, right, which is connected to the net for finding out tires, BMW cars. Right? Where they get a thing of saying what is the tire pressure in each of the four things, right? And then, so that actually that's got this particular mechanism which is connected to the net. These guys from the net, they got in through the tire pressure monitoring system into the engine and took over BMWs, right? Those guys who are driving suddenly found they have no control over the car. That's the kind of thing happening. Spam, January this year, December and January. Fridges used for spamming because they're intelligent fridges, right? And so what is really happening is Internet of Things is brought in a whole lot of issues, right? There are privacy issues, easily hackable, physically stolen those sensors. You can jam them, man-in-middle attacks, rogue things can be inserted. But there are no real things. In fact, the protocols are still being developed. The Internet of Things architecture is still being developed. It's IoTA is the global body that is developing that. Then MQTT and IoT Eclipse they are developing the protocols, and EU is coming up with a good security framework. All these are getting developed. Next is security intelligence context in PCAs. Very important. I think this is critical. I had started by saying security technologies have become obsolete, right, and ineffective to stop. If someone tells me today that they've got a great firewall, right, they don't know what they're talking. You cannot stop. And why can't you stop an attack? Anyone? Most of the attacks, right, are malware-based attacks. These are highly dynamic, polymorphic attacks. They are like morphing, changing their signatures dynamically, where these tools cannot handle it. Secondly, they attack below the radar. We'll come to that point, right? You cannot. Or that's why I said 100% of organizations have been breached. The problem is, when you cannot protect, there are three pillars of security: protection, detection, response. Those days of protecting your organization is gone. Like most of the CISOs and security professionals in organizations, what are they planning? They are saying, okay, fine, I presume I'm already compromised. How can I still help my business do what it is doing in a compromised state? That means all that you're doing is you're taking that you're compromised and mitigating. So there are things like crown jewels, etc. Identify your crown jewels and only protect that, but you can't protect anything else. So protection is out, right? Detection. Therefore, the whole strategy is moved to detection and response, for which security intelligence is required, and you need to have context skills. What is security? I just put this. This is a typical organization. These are the type of controls they have. You know, in an organization, you have content, IAM, perimeter. It's a whole lot of control. But each of that cluster of control, right, is actually working in silos. That means these IAM guys are not talking to perimeter. These controls and technologies will be working in a silo. Each are working in silos. So because they're working in silos, attacks are happening through the gaps in between. Right? So one of the first things for security intelligence is what you call technology interaction. You integrate all these things, make them talk to each other, push them, all of them, under a SIEM. The moment you do that, you're going to higher accuracy, better prediction, organization will start